Hey guys, Manny here from Air Lab. So today I've got an interesting video. This is a dive that myself and a couple fellow divers did at the Port Noarlunga Jetty on August 13th. This was an algae bloom dive. So for those of you who are unaware, South Australia is being currently impacted by a harmful algal bloom, which is sort of a cocktail of a bunch of different algae species that are killing lots and lots and lots of marine life. Right here, we've got some leather jackets, triggerfish sort of species, just washed up on the beach. There's been fish rays, all sorts of sharks washing up on South Australian beaches, around Gulf St. Vincent and around the eastern Spencer Gulf. Now, for the past, for a bit of context, so I've lived in South Australia for about 6 years, and I've been up in Whyalla diving with the giant Australian cuttlefish for the past 3 or 4 months. And while I've heard of the algae bloom impacting other parts of South Australia, the place where I've been diving has not been impacted. So this is the first time that I've actually dove in, this Karenia bloom that's going on. It's not just Karenia, but that seems to be the bad one. So this is Port Noarlunga, the Port Noarlunga Jetty, and this is the first dive that I did when I moved to South Australia back in 2018. And seeing it like this was a bit strange at first. We dropped down. The visibility is bad, as you can tell. Interesting to look at these pylons and see a little bit of growth. I thought that pretty much everything was going to be dead, but thankfully there is still a bit of life clinging on, which is good to see. I guess we'll have to keep our eye out for that and just monitor the site over time. But yeah, it was pretty hard sort of navigating around, even from pylon to pylon. Just swimming in a straight line was tricky. There was a little bit of current, and you can't see the next pylon, which is only a few meters away from the one that you just swam past. So so we got split up there. That's what that was. We got separated. And the other two divers that I'm with today are Sarah and Becky from Divers for Climate. They invited me down to have a chat with policymakers and some government officials to chat about, what we're seeing here on this dive. So a few crabs. As soon as we, get 10, 15 meters away from the shoreline, we start to see a little bit more biodiversity, albeit, dead crabs. It's just interesting to see the wide variety of families, taxonomic groups that are being impacted. This hab is completely non-discriminatory. It's killing everything. It's gnarly. It's really bad. Also, for a bit of context, my camera was at low battery. Forgot to charge it for this dive. So I'm just being a little bit selective about what I'm shooting. So I try to get some shots, which I'll put up throughout this dive. I just have a GoPro mounted on my head, and I'll overlay some footage and some photos as we come along to it. So a bit further down, we start to get some dead fish species, which was really heartbreaking. This was a really hard dive, guys. This was very emotionally taxing. I really feel for the dive community, for people who have been diving in in impacted areas since, you know, it started happening earlier this year. But as you can see, there's lots of these little stringy tube worm-like critters. Normally you wouldn't see those on a dive. It was interesting to see, you know, those sort of species which would be living under the sand, you know, dying or dead, just on the surface. Yeah, this was probably the worst part of the dive, hands down. Yeah, just a pile of dead fish, basically. A few puffers, western talma, sea cucumber. They had short-finned worm eels in this bunch. Even just as I'm, you know, sitting here and watching the footage back, it's yeah, it was just it was traumatizing. That's like the only way to put it. I've worked in some warm water locations, and, you know, seen corals and coral bleaching. I've seen a lot of bleaching happen, which is sad and devastating. But I think it's different when you're seeing, you know, much larger living organisms just annihilated. You know, this bloom has been, you know, compared to as like a underwater bushfire, but it was just apocalyptic down here. Like it was so bad. Here we had a razor clam, razorfish, that vertical shell thing. They provide, you know, good habitat for other species, and they are a filter feeder, just like a mussel or a clam. They're a bivalve, so it was sad to see that one go. Interestingly, so there's a bit of seagrass here. The last time I dove this jetty was, 2018? So I remember there being a lot more seagrass down towards the far edge of the jetty. And this dive site, it's sort of shaped like a T. So, you know, you have the jetty running out from shore, and then you have a reef that runs perpendicular to the very end of the jetty. And so we're starting to get down towards the end now. We're getting pretty close to the edge of that reef. I think we're at about 6 meters of depth right here. We have abalone that's dying. And I did start to see a few living fish. So this is a scorpion fish of some sort. Perch, maybe. I'm not super familiar with these Adelaide species. I live a bit further west. Also, this you know, Gurnard-esque looking guy was pretty cool. You could tell how he's got all these sort of camouflaged like patterns that aren't necessarily working very much for him right now, because, you know, all the colorful sponge life and growth is decayed. You know, normally fish like this you'd be pretty hard pressed to see. So I think I was seeing a few more of these sort of more camouflage fish out and about, because, yeah, they have nothing hiding. yeah, so I wanted to make sure I got some shots of a couple living crabs. I wanted to make sure I got some shots of the pylons and how stripped back they were at different depths. Yeah, what was really good to see though, what I was happy to see was this. So here we have a couple native oysters. These are Astrea and Gazi, the native flat oyster, and they're living. They're actually alive, and they're acting as habitat for these crabs. Now, if you pay attention to the rim of this oyster, you'll see it move in a second. Yep, there we go. That's a really good indicator that it's alive, unlike this guy. Interestingly, we saw some other living stuff. We saw this leather jacket, acting a bit strange for a leather jacket, if you ask me. As this algal bloom progresses and there's less food available, if everything's dying, it's going to throw the food chain, the food web out of whack. So you're going to get some species acting differently if they're surviving, maybe hunting in different types of habitats that they're not normally used to hanging around. Also interesting to see how some snails were doing okay. Like that first one that I picked up, I put him back. I didn't know. I just wanted to check to see if he was alive. Same species as that guy. But yeah, it's interesting to see how some species are living or not living. Some are a bit more resilient than others. And this is down now towards the end of the jetty. These are the stairs. And the stairs are generally filled with mussels, but these mussels were dead. Now, the jetty was closed on this day. That's why we walked in from the beach and just swam down. Normally, you would just enter this dive site from those stairs, but they were doing some maintenance on it on this day. You can't see the bottom. I just wanted to throw this clip in there because it was hard to see it. Another Ngazi oyster, which was really promising, as well as this bullseye. And like I was saying earlier, the behaviors of fish starting to change. Normally you'd see this type of fish around larger reef structures, around caves, and in much larger schools. Maybe not, too big of a school, but yeah, you'd see these guys in, groups of 20, 30, 40 maybe. Yeah, and this is pretty much the end of the dive. I started to head in. Sarah and Becky and I, we all got separated, of course. And there's a bit of a reef right off the beach. Like there's a nice kelp reef, I guess just off to the south side of the jetty. And I went for a swim past it, and thankfully it was looking pretty good. Hopefully it clings on. But yeah, guys, I just wanted to say thanks for taking the time to watch this video if you've gotten this far. And yeah, I think we need a lot of help. We need a lot of monitoring to go down. We need support from the dive community during these times. And for my local South Australian community, we'll be putting out some more information on restoration activities that will be happening in the future so that you can help out if you'd like. Huge thank you to Sarah and Becky for making the trip down, for organizing all the meetings, and for diving with me on this day. If you're after more information, head to airlab.org or check out our socials at airlab. That's EYRELAB.